Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. The spotlight plants today, which has become a sort of bit of a tradition in the Sunday chat now, is to spotlight a genus. We're going to have a look at Cymbidiums. I am not the world's leading expert, but you know, we can have a chat about them and what I think rather than what I know. Stuff going on. It was nice of people to explain why, but there were a lot of people missing at the Orchid Society yesterday. Hospital, bad fall, visitors, just had to go to a football match. But a lot of people let us know that they wouldn't be able to come. Unfortunately, that meant there were only about half the normal people there, which means we got half the income from the catering. We didn't get anywhere near as much on the raffle, but we still had to pay the same amount for the hall. Yeah? And from my point of view, the same amount of work was done for the talk, whether there were 2 people there or 52 people there. All I'm glad about is it's done. It's over. The eagles are coming and all that. But it was a little disappointing to have such a small audience after the amount of effort that had gone into it. But you know, such is life. You know, people had unexpected visitors arrived. There are all sorts of genuine reasons why people didn't come. But there were also quite a few missing that didn't give us any reason why they didn't come. But it was just a very, very low attendance. I suppose we are also getting into holiday season, you know, and yeah, you've also got the problem where a lot of our members are couples. Well, like, if one's got a reason they can't come, the other one won't come. So although there's a genuine reason, you know, like a fall, somebody's injured their shoulder quite bad, well, it meant 2 went missing, not 1. So yeah, it's quite low attendance yesterday. But it made life very easy for me as treasurer doing the money this morning. All I had to do was count it and put it in the books. And I got up this morning feeling like I'd got my life back again. Like, you know, today I can choose what I do. I'm not under any pressure to do something on a time scale, and that is big relief. The only thing I've got now, the next thing coming up is this coming Saturday. I'm off to the Burnham's Orchid Festival, which is some displays by orchid societies, some traders, and of course Burnham's itself, with obviously the nursery will be open as well as the sales area. Orchid Paradise will, I'm sure, have been set up, you know, with displays and things. So I'm going with Lynn. We have a deal. We have this place that we stop at for breakfast that is still the best coffee I've ever had. And I keep it in my mind. Wherever I am and I have a coffee, I think, is it as good as that place we have breakfast? And so far, no. Nobody's come near it yet. Absolutely brilliant coffee. I wouldn't go there just for that, because this is just about 60 miles away. But time-wise, it's over halfway. It's about 2/3 of the way there. It's the amount of time that just coincides with thinking, I've had enough of driving for a bit, can we have a break? And then up comes this place on the side of the road that does the most brilliant breakfast and the best coffee in the world. Lynn pays for that and I do the driving. That's our deal. So I'll be going with Lynn. We're setting off a little bit later than usual on the grounds that neither of us have any reason to get there bang on 10 o'clock when they open the doors. We don't need to be early. And we can't go too early because the place where we have breakfast doesn't open until 9 o'clock. We're not missing that. So that's coming up this coming Saturday. Obviously there'll be video from that. I might split that into 2, you know, sort of the displays and everything, and then a look around the nursery, something like that. Do 2 smaller videos. We'll see how it goes. And then after that, I do have another obligation for the Orchid Society. As treasurer, the next meeting is our AGM, and I have to do an annual treasurer's report. I'll let you into a secret. We get last year's out, change the dates and change the figures, so that won't take long. Last year I had to invent it, yeah, so it did take a while, but this year I will get the old one out and change it to suit what's happened in the past year. It always seems strange, the AGM's in June and I'm doing an annual report based on 1st of January to the end of December, and that's ages ago, like I've forgotten most of that. But it's all recorded. I've just got to dig out the figures and give an annual report. Basically, we're doing very well as a society. The funds are good. We've got plenty of backup for things possibly going wrong. Like the hall that we use, they had to put their prices up, and we were getting really worried. We pay by the hour. Now, like yesterday's meeting was just a meeting, so it was 3 hours. When we have a committee meeting, it's 5 hours. And the guy said, I'm ever so sorry, but we're going to have to put the prices up this year because of the cost of the heating and everything, gone up so much. It went up less than £5 an hour. So we said, really, don't worry about it. But, things like that. That hall could close down and we might have to find somewhere else that's 2 or 3 times as expensive. Well, we've got the backup for it, we've got the funds. And this year I'm going to do that report a bit different because I'm actually going to analyse where our money comes from. So I'll actually work out, how much income we get from our membership, from our subscriptions, how much we get on, as an average for an annual figure from our catering, and from our 2 shows, that sort of thing. And then there isn't much else really, we've got what we spend, most of which we have to, what we bring in, and then we've got assets, they're a flipping nuisance. We've got a library, we've got a cupboard, big sort of 6 foot high cupboard by 3 foot 6 wide, full of books that never get looked at and never get used because we haven't got a librarian, and who wants to get all those out and then put them all away when nobody's looked at them? So, they're just sat in a cupboard. Once upon a time they were valued at several £1,000s. You can't give books away at the moment. We had a load of books donated at the last show from somebody whose mum had passed away who had a lot of Orchid books. They just brought them in a big carry bag, dumped them on the floor and said, there's some books for you, they're from my mum. And walked out. Oh, cheers. You can't give them away. So what I'm doing, I'm taking them in a couple at a time and putting them on the raffle table. That way they've got to go, haven't they? Yeah, anything you want to get rid of that's Orchid related, that you can't get rid of any other way, you chuck it on the raffle table. Somebody's got to take it away then. So I'm gradually reducing that down as well. I mean, I've got 2 bags of that coconut husk that I bought that I used to use. I don't want it. We're not going to sell it on our shop, so I'm just going to stick it in the raffle. And I'll just make sure whoever gets it gets a chat with me about making sure you soak it 2 or 3 times and rinse it thoroughly and blah blah blah. You know what that stuff's like, it's full of salt. But that'll get rid of that as well. Right, so that's that. And then coming up after that is Malvern, the big 3 counties show at Malvern Showground. I was just going to say, where is it? Well, it's Malvern. It's all in the name, More coffee. And the plan is at the moment, I don't see it changing, but the plan at the moment is to get up and go early on Friday. I've only bought 1 ticket, so I can only go for 1 day. We get a heavily discounted ticket. It's well over 20 quid to get into that show. As a society, we get discounted tickets of £10. So £10 for a massive show like that is pretty good as an entry fee. You've got expenses on top. There's the fuel to get there and back, and I got to eat. I'm not going all day with no food. But I know somewhere where I can stop and have a nice big breakfast that's, and then it's on my way. All I've got to do is turn off, there it is, back on the road, onto the motorway. So we'll probably do that and have a decent breakfast. And then that'll do me probably for most of the day. I won't need much else. But yeah, my plan is to go on the Friday, which is the first day it's open to the public, on the grounds that if I am going to buy anything, I get in early and get to look around before it's all gone, if you see what I mean. I think Hannah and I went Sunday last year, and there wasn't a huge amount left for sale. Lots of the traders had, you know, thinned out quite a bit. On a 3-day event, if you go on the last day, you know. Yeah, so I'm going on the first day this time, on the Friday. That means my journey will be different. On a Sunday, when you leave early in the morning, the road's yours. Well, you know what I mean. Vroom vroom. Because the roads are empty, nobody's up and about yet. But I'll be going on a Friday, so I've got the workers' traffic and the school traffic and all that will get involved. So, but nonetheless, it's a pretty straightforward route. You know, I've done it quite a few times before. I don't need to look it up or anything daft like that. So that's that. And then after that is too far ahead to start planning for. That's as far as the plans go at the moment. Right, my talk yesterday was appreciated. Individuals came up and said thank you while we were having our cake and, well, in my case coffee, but most people have tea. Now I've done talks for that society before and that didn't happen. So that was nice, you know, to come up and say thank you individually. So that was good, although there weren't many there. And because we were talking about because all the cake's homemade, it's homemade cake, none of this bought in cobblers. And I was talking to a friend last time about the type of cake. And I said, do you know, there's a type of cake I really like that you never see nowadays. It's gone right out of fashion. That's a cake with dates in. You know, date and sultana or something like that. You just don't see it anymore. So this lady was really kind and actually baked. She doesn't normally do the cakes. It's, you know, she's not normally part of that sort of catering team. But she baked a date and banana cake. Not just for me, because obviously I'm not eating a whole cake. But yeah, so I had a date and banana cake for my slice of cake and my coffee, and I didn't pay for it because I did the talk. The speaker gets free, so yeah, it's just a nice little touch. But it was an enjoyable day. The sun came out, you know, it was a pleasant drive. Everything went smoothly. But yeah, it was a bit sad there weren't too many there, but that's life. It happens. That can also happen when you get extreme weather. You get really torrential rain or something like that. People look out the window and think, I'm not driving in that, and don't go. Same as if you've got icy weather or snow or anything. No, not driving in that, so they just don't go. I soldier on, I battle through storm and wind. It's not a lot stops me, I must admit, not driving wise. Floods would do it probably. And 3 foot of snow would probably do it first thing in the morning before they've cleared it. Right, so that's that lot. In here, we're now getting, the sun is now heading towards its maximum. So the sun is getting well up this roof now, and it's adding another 2 or 3 degrees to my temperature when it's a sunny day. So that means my daytime temperatures now on sunny days for a fair bit of the day is getting up to sort of 24, 25 degrees. I'm happy with that. I don't really want it any higher than that. I'm okay with that. But on days where there is no sun and it's a bit nippy outside, it's still using the heater to keep it at 21, 22. So I'm still having to use that heater to raise the daytime temperature. Because it's certainly not at 21 degrees first thing in the morning. And I need that temperature for a lot of the day, not just the bit in the middle when the sun comes overhead. So I haven't changed the nighttime temperature, but I'm thinking of upping that by 1 as well. Things are starting to grow. Things are starting to grow, slowly but surely, but it's just so late in the year, you know. Looking back at some of the clips from the old place, you know, and the date the video was made, things like that, you know, sort of all these new growths bursting out of dendrobiums, and it's not even April. Well, we're well into May now, and I've got some that are only just starting. So they're not going to get full-size canes, I'm going to have to accept that. They're not going to get to full size in the time they've got before the short days kick in. So we have to live with that, life and stuff. Right, Cymbidiums. I've had one a long time, which it's not really mine, it's Hannah's, but she can't look after it where she is. And it was a friend of hers in the flats that she lives in that had orchids in all the windows. And so she knew him quite well, and when he died she was given the Cymbidium at the funeral, because he'd asked if she could have one. So Dad, can you look after it? Well, and this is a good start to my life with Cymbidiums, because I had a few via that route and I didn't have room for them, and I put them out under the overhang of the roof in the front, so they weren't in sun apart from first thing in the morning, and they didn't get heavy rain on them because of the overhang of the roof, and they got forgotten and they stayed out there all winter, and that included periods below freezing, and they all survived. So that's just to sort of start off, you know, as far as temperatures are concerned, they can go down pretty cool. I would suggest that they're not soaking wet when they get down to those low temperatures, but that applies to a lot of orchids, doesn't it? So really, you've got two types of Cymbidiums. There are those that tend to be clubbed together as the Chinese ones. They tend to be cooler growers, they tend to be smaller plants with much narrower leaves and consequently smaller flowers. But there are some very attractive blooms in amongst that little set. When I was at the Bournemouth Orchid Society, we had a guy actually did a talk entitled Chinese Cymbidiums. Obviously there's hybrids in amongst them now as well as the species, but the main problem with Cymbidiums for a lot of people is their sheer size. Well, they're not all giants, there are minis, real miniatures, you know, that are like, you know, that sort of size. That's not a big plant, yeah? Well, if you had a Cymbidium that size, that would be a miniature, a true miniature. And then in all sizes up to giant, basically. Biggest one I've ever seen was the first time I ever went to McBean's and did the tour with Jim, and went into the Cymbidium house, and this individual Cymbidium that they had about 50 years or something like that was in a dustbin. It was that big, and it had its own Facebook page. It was a giant. And I'd never seen an orchid that big, I must admit. And there were some real monsters in there as well. So they can get big, and that's what puts a lot of people off. As far as keeping them is concerned, they like good light, they like some air movement, and to accommodate that in this country, in the UK, most people, unless they've got hundreds, put them outside for the summer months. I have. I mean, I brought one in to have a look at in a minute, but apart from the one here that hasn't been repotted yet, although it will be probably this week because the blooms are going over now, that's the last one. So that's the last one to be repotted. All the others have already been done. Yeah, so mine went outside a week ago, and for at least this month I will be concentrating on the weather. I tend to watch the news in the morning, you know, while I'm in my dressing gown and having a couple of coffees, and I get a weather forecast with temperatures predicted for the night to come. And if there happens to be a bit of a cold snap, all I've got to do is bring them in here and put them on the floor until the next morning when they can go back out again. But you've got to watch your nighttime temperatures if you put them outside. If you put them outside, they appreciate either some early morning sun, which is good sun because it's never that strong and the heat takes a while before it comes in this country, or some late evening sun. What they don't like is the sun that is either side of midday. It's just too strong for them, they will burn. Now, if some people have got quite a lot, you might think about erecting a shade tent, which is just nothing more than some shade netting overhead to stop the sun actually hitting them for the majority of the day. Sides can be left open so that you've got the breeze and the airflow. And if it's done with netting, it will also allow some rain through. But the one thing it will stop is hail. I've seen video clips of people that have had their Cymbidiums in a hailstorm and it shredded them. Absolutely shredded them. They were ruined. They weren't dead and they would live and they would grow again. But they were ruined for that year. Oh, God. So there's somebody at the door. I'll be back. I got a parcel. Now, I know what's in it, but I thought we could open that. Have a look. Because I haven't opened it. Yeah, anyway. We'll get in there. Hannah ordered this for me because she's on Prime on Amazon, so she gets the postage free. What we've got is, it's got its own little bag. It's not staying there. What we've got is an aid, and it's quite an important aid for me. As you know, we are doing a lot more in the garden now, yeah? And when you start looking at your garden and you want it to look reasonably nice, you get weeds. And I got a bad back. So I now have a long-handled fork. So I can hook weeds out without bending. And literally loosen the soil, hook the weed out onto the concrete and sweep it up and pick it up later. So yeah, it's got a nice handle, nice grip. Pleased with that. Good stuff. So that's for the garden obviously, not for in here. And intruders, I suppose. Right, so I'll just put that down there for a minute. Crash, bang, wallop. Right, that wasn't what was at the door, that was next door. He's having a bit of work done on his van, and would it be alright if he blocked my car in? Was I planning on going out? I said, no, help yourself, I'm in all day. As far as I know, I'm not going out. If there's an emergency, he'll have to move it, won't he? Right, so that's that. Right, Cymbidiums then, where did we get to? Outside, care outside. This bit is important, and this information comes from Jim and from Mathers, and who's been growing and breeding and hybridising Cymbidiums most of his life. So you don't get much more experienced than that. That's about as good as it's ever going to get. Nice guy and very pleasant to talk to as well. Just the knowledge, just, you know, it comes out of his top pocket, like, you know, it's just so much of it. Where's my coffee? Basically, the normal Cymbidiums that you find blooming winter into early spring, which is a lot of them bloom that time of year. There are some autumn bloomers, but they're a different set. So if you've got Cymbidiums that are going to bloom winter time or into early spring, or hopefully throughout that whole period, if you get a succession of spikes, it's important to know that those spikes are inside the bulb. So if you think like a daffodil, yeah? Everything to do with the bloom is inside the bulb. And then at the right time of year it all comes out and there's the flowers. Well, it's the same as Cymbidiums. There's an embryo spike inside the bulb. And those are formed when the nights turn cold. That's like the trigger for them to think, right, we're going to have to bloom in the not too distant future, we better get going. And that happens as you come towards the end of summer. Yeah? The days are starting to shorten, which means the nights are a bit longer. So the nights are not holding the heat of the day as well as they were with the longer days. They start to get cooler. And that's what triggers the embryo spikes. And it's the time of year. So it's good to have your plants outside during that time. Because if they're in a controlled environment like here, chances are those night temperatures aren't going to change, and you might not get spikes, or you might not get such good ones. It's all down to this, you know, anything from none at all to not as good as it should be. Yeah. So having them out and letting them be affected by those cool nights is a good thing. And you can still get them to bloom without it. Don't think, oh, there's no point in me getting any, I can't do that. They'll still bloom, they just might not have, you know. I mean, if you think a Cymbidium bulb, if it blooms, it's going to have a spike. Well, it's possible to get 2, and I've even seen 3. So when you say it's not blooming as well as it could, that one spike could have been 2 perhaps, if it had had that treatment, had that temperature drop. And it's the time of year, you know, because you think like, you know, the winter resting dendrobiums, for instance, their temperature drop needs to start sort of November towards December. Well, this is happening in August, September time, when the nights, you know, midsummer's June, you know, July, end of August into September, nights are getting short, you're starting to get that, you know, if you're out in the garden in the evening, you start to think, do you know, I'm going to go and put a cardi on. That's when those spikes are forming, so it's important. So that's that. They are classed as heavy feeders, and a lot of that is down to the sheer volume of stuff they've got to grow in a season. If you think on a big size Cymbidium, as I said, I've got one over there, we'll have a look at it in a minute, it's got to do all that in one season, you know, so needs some food. When in active growth, feed well, and as I said, the ones that Mathers that they use for cut flower production, the spikes are taken off and the individual blooms are removed and presented in little presentation boxes. It's a little business that goes there, and they feed and water those giant plants 5 times a day to push those spikes on. You know, swell the bulbs up, push the spikes on, get those plants real butcher's dog sort of size, and this, that and the other. Cymbidiums outside don't mind getting rained on, but again, if you're in for some bad weather over a long period of time where you get heavy rain continuously for a long period of time and the temperatures are lower, it might pay you just to put them somewhere sheltered for a while, because otherwise they're just going to stay soaking wet all the time, aren't they? So keep them, you know, look after them basically, don't put them outside and forget about them. Because the other thing, that if you put them outside and forget about them, they can dry quite quickly out there. Get a little bit of a breeze, that water evaporates off that pot very quickly. And also the leaves can dehydrate in a breeze, so you need to be pushing it in from the bottom to replace that. Humidity outside in the UK is not very often high, yeah? So, you know, you don't expect them to have their humidity topped up around their leaves from the air in the UK. The only time we get good humidity in the UK normally is when it's actually raining. As soon as it stops and the sun comes out, there goes the humidity. Off back up into the atmosphere. So that's that. Once the spikes start to grow, you've got the cascade types. Obviously they don't get staked, but they need raising up to give those cascading spikes room. If you don't give them room, they'll catch on a shelf or something and they won't be as good. So get them up out the way so that they can cascade down. If you've got one that is an upright one but is not strong enough to hold that spike and all those blooms upright and arches over, sometimes the sheer weight within those hybrids is too much and the spike will snap. So people tend to stake them, and they like to stake them upright because they don't take up as much room. You've got a Cymbidium with 5 spikes, one going in every direction, it takes up like a circle about 4 foot across. So most people try and stake them upright, and if you're going to do that, take great care, they will snap. You've got to do it a bit at a time. So, you know, they come out at that angle, like, you know, so you put your stake over here somewhere and your little loop round it or whatever, it will pull it up to there. and leave it 3 or 4 days, and then do it again, you know, and then put another clip on a bit higher up, because in those 10 days where you've gradually moved it, it's now twice the size, so you need to pull the top in, or the top will bend out. But go careful, they do snap. I've yet to snap a Cymbidium spike, but I've seen plenty of videos of people who've done it. And there's a list of words you can use if you do happen to snap one. Not for videos though. Right, well that's nearly cold, so we've already been on a long time. So let's have a look at this one then. This is, I would class this as my best. This came from Burnham. Now see what I mean by size. It's getting tangled up in my hotbox wire. Now this I would say is my best one. It came from Burnham's in bloom and carried on blooming for a long time afterwards. In other words, it produced more spikes than it had when I got it. Now this one has currently got a row of new growths here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Another one round here, 5. It's got at least 5, oh, and another one here, 6. It's got 5 or 6 new growths. It is highly likely every one of those will spike. And unfortunately I can't remember if any of the bulbs that were on it when I got it actually had 2 spikes or not. I've got a feeling at least one of them did. So it might even be possible that some of these will double spike, we shall see. But the important thing going on here is it's been repotted, so it does need to grow some new roots off of those new growths, and I can see them heading down into the pot, so that's happening. Watch out for pests, especially slugs and snails. They will damage new growths. They can't do much harm once they get going, because this is sturdy stuff. This doesn't give in very easily. But so you know, this is getting fed regular. These have got to grow huge big bulbs this season to enable them to have the energy to produce nice big long spikes with many blooms. If this does what I think it's going to do at the time of year I think it's going to do it, that will go in a show. And if it does what I think it's going to do, it'll be a showstopper, because the blooms are very attractive. Its only downside as far as a show is concerned is it's not a species. So it will be competing with species, and some judges still have it in their head that species are better than hybrids. I'd debate that. So there we go, a sort of chat about Cymbidiums. As I said, I'm not an expert, but quite honestly, they're not a fussy orchid. You know, I mean, I've got some orchids that are only just alive, and they're going to be difficult to keep going. They're fussy, whereas Cymbidiums aren't, and they don't need lots of fussing. They just need the right sort of light, some reasonable airflow, which just put them outside just does that. The air's always on the move, isn't it, out in the UK? You know, you step outside the door and there goes your wig, whoosh. So, you know, they're not too difficult to look after. The year that I kept Hannah's Cymbidium in the grow room, this is round the other place, it didn't bloom. And it didn't bloom because it didn't get the light. You may think how heavily shaded that place used to be in the growing season to try and keep the heat out. It didn't bloom, it didn't have enough light. And as a consequence of being indoors, it didn't get those cool nights. So, you know, I can safely say that that didn't bloom because blah 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 blah. Because next year it went out and it bloomed. So, you know, that's sort of good stuff. So there we go then. That'll do for today. I'm going to go and have a play with my new fork, because this area here that a lot of Carol's plants have been put in, the ones that like a sort of dappled shade sort of stuff, woodland type plants, there are quite a few weeds coming up in that area now, and I don't want them to sort of take control, because they take the nutrients out of the soil and they swamp other plants and don't give them a chance to sort of get going. So I want to try and keep the weeds down, and I don't want to start using weed killers and stuff like that in areas that are planted. I don't mind on these gravel beds. I mean, I have treated 2 of the gravel beds this year with it's a weed killer that's, well, it's called Path Clear. Basically, it's systemic, and you get a little tube, you mix it up in your watering can, and you water it on. And it takes 10 to 14 days before the weeds start to die. You know, I'm sort of thinking, well, this stuff's rubbish, it don't flipping work. So I looked it up. Don't expect to see results for 10 to 14 days. And the results are now showing. But it forms a barrier so that things won't germinate for quite a while. And I thought, on the gravel beds, I need that. I need them to look clean. I'm going to get a leaf rake, but it will serve 2 purposes. That's a rake that has long prongs that are quite close together and are quite a big spread, like a curve. You rake up your leaves with it. But it'll also rake the gravel and smooth it over and level it and make it just look nicer. So I've got to get one of them. I won't be ordering that online. I'll go around the local DIY shop. I'll get that, not the garden centre, because it'll be 3 times the price for the same item, I expect. So we'll get that soon. But yeah, I'd like the gravel beds to stay clean and look, you know, nice and even. So I don't want lots of weeds and everything growing there. I mean, there might come a time when the weeds are gone and permanently gone, I might get some wildflower seeds for like an edge of one of the gravel beds, to just put some sort of native plants with some colour, and again, bees, butterflies, that sort of thing. But not until I'm happy the weeds are gone. And that's going to take several years, because, you know, they will have seeded. Well, those seeds, they don't all germinate at once. So, you know, they always say, 1 year's seeds, 7 years weeds. One of those silly old wives' tales. Sort of thing your gran tells you, because her gran told her and her gran told her. But anyway, that'll do for today. If you're still here and haven't dozed off or run out of coffee or tea, or well, it depends on the time of day. I keep forgetting, all around the world there's people, you know, some people haven't even got up yet. Some people are thinking about going to bed. You know, it's different parts of the world. But so some people might be sitting with a glass of wine, whereas here it's whatever it is, 11 o'clock in the morning. So, you know, so somewhere it might be evening time. But yeah, thanks as always for the support for the channel. That's a generalised statement. It doesn't matter what your support is. Just watching is a form of support, because it's a view for the video. Stats for the channel. Comments help. Thumbs up helps. Subscribing, you know, if you're not and you do so, it's a new subscriber. YouTube's algorithms see these things changing. You know, if they see the rate of subscriptions going up, it affects the algorithm and the way it works. So, strange noise. Well, it's Sunday, people come out and do stuff, don't they? Yeah, so thanks to everybody for the support in whatever form it is. You know, the buy me a coffee for a little thank you, for perhaps for a certain video, something like that. And the patrons who stick in there with the Patreon site. And of course the membership. He was getting his motorbike out. That's what the noise was. That's a gorgeous bike. Listen to that. That's a proper motorbike. Unfortunately, when you're filming, it's quite loud. Never mind, coming to the end anyway. So again, thanks to everybody who supports the channel in whatever form. It's all appreciated, and the channel is growing. It is a slow growth, but as orchid channels go, it's doing okay. I'm happy with everything, and I'm happy to continue with it all as is, you know, and take on any suggestions from yourselves for a specific video or the next genus for next Sunday, you know, that sort of thing. And I will just mention that the Project Orchid video didn't happen on Friday this week. I'm missing a week because of circumstances, so we'll pick it up again next week. And we've only got 2 more to do, and then we will start round 3 for the 8 orchids in question. So I hadn't forgotten the Project Orchids video if you were specifically looking for it. It's just missed a week. And we've still got enough Fridays in May to actually complete the 8 orchids on schedule. So we're not encroaching it on the next sort of phase. So anyway, I shall see you next time. Thanks for dropping by. Appreciated.